gentleman from Michigan, then the chairman of the full committee, if he is able to make it, and then we will begin our questioning. So I want to thank each of you for being up here today. Today's hearing addresses one of the most difficult issues for people of good conscience to contemplate, the exploitation of society's most innocent and vulnerable, which would be our children. Public safety is the preeminent function of government, and even among the preeminence of this function, protecting those who cannot fully protect themselves is most important. Today begins our process of examining current laws pertaining to the exploitation of children and to evaluate the effectiveness of these laws and work together across every proverbial aisle that exists to make sure our laws are as tough and effective as possible, amend where needed, strengthen where needed. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today, but more importantly, for every day other than today, while you are living out your commitment and dedication to combating and preventing child exploitation and abuse. No longer is it simply physical proximity that puts our children in danger. The internet and other things have created an alternative world where sex offenders can easily and sometimes surreptitiously exploit our children through just a few strokes on a keyboard. Not only are offenders finding vulnerable victims, they're also finding other people who share their depravities. These online communities embolden predators, leading to even more egregious and criminal behavior. The images being produced and distributed on the internet today target even younger children, including infants, with ever more graphic images. Over the past decades, Congress has enacted a number of laws to protect children from exploitation. In 1984, Congress established the creation of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, a nonprofit organization to help prevent child abduction and sexual exploitation, to help find missing children and to assist victims and their families. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has played a critical role in not only contributing to public awareness of the threats of sexual exploitation on the internet, but also in assisting law enforcement by facilitating the reporting of these crimes and identifying and locating children so they can be rescued. Tragically, more often than not, a victim's image is redistributed time and time again. Long after a picture has been posted, the victim can be re-victimized hundreds of times over. This permanent depiction of abuse can re-victimize victims for the remainder of their lives. If you're a victim of sexual abuse or exploitation, there is no statute of limitations on your own personal suffering. Because of this National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, we are now able to use certain technology to identify a child in an image so we can assure they are fully able to seek justice. In 1998, Congress passed the Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Registration Act, which requires states to track violent offenders. 2006, the Adam Walsh Act was signed into law. Under this federal statute came the creation of a National Sex Offender Registry, which requires each state to apply criteria for public posting offender data on the internet. It also created an office at the Justice Department to oversee the standards for sex offender notification and registration requirements. In 1998, the Department of Justice established the task forces to investigate internet crimes against children. This program has been incredibly successful. In 2015 alone, these task force programs conducted more than 54,000 investigations and 61,000 forensic exams. These efforts resulted in the arrest of more than 8,500 suspects. In the wake of evolving technologies and new ways to commit crimes, Congress has also passed laws to combat child pornography. Last year, we introduced the Justice for Child Victims Act, which creates a compensation fund paid for by child pornography defendants as an alternative avenue for victims to quickly obtain the financial support needed for recovery. So remarkable progress has been made in preventing crimes against children as well as investigating and prosecuting these offenses, but there is more to do. Predators will continue to do everything to remain undetected, and it is our fundamental and constitutional duty to implement tools to enable law enforcement and investigators to track down these predators. Children are the most vulnerable and innocent of victims. They are completely dependent upon us. They merit the greatest protections our law allows. They merit the most severe form of punishment the law allows. This includes everything from preventing these crimes from occurring, strengthening the ability to investigate these crimes, strengthening the prosecution and pretrial methodologies, so children are interviewed as few times as possible by trained professionals who know how to both talk to and listen to children. and assuring victims have access to restitution and support services to fully aid them in the recovery process. So with that, I would thank our witnesses again. I look forward to our conversation and would recognize the gentleman from Michigan, the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Conyers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I read the 3 sentences of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is in a markup in another committee?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And here's what is said in her behalf. Our ranking member, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, is also a member of the House Budget Committee, which is currently debating the health care bill. She will not be able to attend this hearing today, but she expresses her passion for combating crimes against children, which is a major problem in her district and the city of Houston in the form of human trafficking. As ranking member of this subcommittee and founder and chair of the Children's Caucus, she pledges her support to work together to create a legal system that protects all our children and punishes the perpetrators of crimes against children. And now, in my own behalf, I wanted to mention that today's hearings, Mr. Chairman and members, by this subcommittee will discuss the serious and disturbing issue of the criminal victimization of children. With all of our efforts to fight the various forms of child exploitation, it continues to be a threat to our young people. However, we've developed strategies to both prevent and respond to these crimes and to assist in the many children who are victims. I trust we will learn about the strategies that are working and how we can do better. In April of last year, the Department of Justice reported to us that the main threats in this area in the next 5 years will be child pornography, sex extortion, child sex trafficking, sex offender registry violations, and child sex tourism. The response to these crimes involve an intricate network of federal, state, and local law enforcement and prosecutorial agencies and private, nonprofit organizations and advocates supported by direct federal funding authorizations and grant programs, all working together to keep our youngest constituents safe from harm. Today, we will hear from individuals representing some of the entities involved in this necessary mission, and their roles illustrate the ways we can do more and do better. We're proud to have these 4 witnesses with us. First, we in Congress must recognize that while we can enact federal legislation, state and local law enforcement are on the front lines, and we must support their partnerships with federal agencies. The Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force program, funded through the Justice Department's Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, provides training and technical assistance and regularly conducts undercover online investigative operations. Since Congress mandated creation of this program, 3,500 federal, state, and local law enforcement and prosecutorial agencies have joined to form 61 coordinated regional task forces. These task forces are especially important now because we're seeing a tremendous increase in crimes perpetrated against children on the internet. Detective Patrick Beaver from the Loudoun County, Virginia Sheriff's Office will speak to us today about his successes that his office have enjoyed working with the Northern Virginia Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force to conduct an operation targeting internet predators last year. Next, we must provide specialized assistance to families, victims, and law enforcement to help prevent child abductions, recover missing children, identify and assist victims of child pornography and child sex trafficking. That is the mission of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and we'll hear from their representative today about what they're experiencing in providing this assistance. As a former local and federal prosecutor, Ms. Francie Hawks will also help us about the challenges at the state and local levels in fighting these crimes and enforcing our laws. All of this will help us consider legislation to amend and reauthorize important statutes such as the Adam Walsh Act and the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Clearly, we must do more to prevent and investigate these crimes, and especially assist their many victims. When we do apprehend and convict offenders, we must recognize that most of them will be released back into society at some point. The Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act is intended to establish a nationwide system of monitoring and trafficking sex offenders, particularly after they're released from prison. Currently, there are over 850,000 registered sex offenders in this country. If we're going to have such a system, we must ensure that it is used in appropriate circumstances and in the most effective manner. However, only 17 states are in substantial compliance with its requirements. States, policymakers, researchers, and advocates continue to object to the requirements established by SORNA for many reasons. One of the most pervasive criticisms of SORNA is the inclusion of juveniles on registries. Ms. Nicole Pittman is here today to discuss the real impact of juvenile registration on the juveniles, their families, and the overall effectiveness of SORNA. I thank the chairman for holding this hearing on this important topic. We all wish that child exploitation could be eradicated, but the problem persists. With what we learned today, I hope we can work together to come closer to achieving our goal. I thank the chair.
Chair thanks the gentleman from Michigan and now recognizes the gentleman from California, the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Goodlatte.
Except I'm from Virginia.
What did I say?
California.
Whatever I said, I meant Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, notwithstanding that, I am very pleased that you're holding this hearing, and I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about it. It's a very important hearing on combating crimes against children. Much progress has been made over the past few decades in preventing, investigating, and prosecuting child exploitation crimes, but there is still work to be done. The Bureau of Justice Statistics once reported that 67% of all victims of sexual assault reported to law enforcement agencies were juveniles under the age of 18. 34% of all victims were under age 12. These statistics are unacceptable and are especially frightening in light of the fact that most child sexual abuse goes unreported. It is for this reason we must remain vigilant in protecting the most vulnerable and innocent victims of crime, our children. As a father and grandfather, I can think of no more important role for law enforcement. Over the past several years, Congress has taken important steps to prevent criminals from victimizing children in the first place. This includes the establishment of a national sex offender registry and the passage of the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act, a comprehensive set of national guidelines for state sex offender registries. These registries are crucial in assuring that sex offenders are not living off the grid, are not evading state and federal law enforcement, and most importantly, are not having unsupervised interactions with children. I very much appreciate the work of the United States Marshals and the contributions of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to this effort. Each provides assistance to state and local law enforcement in locating non-compliant sex offenders, people who pose a very real risk to our children. The U.S. Marshals were tasked with this mission in the original Adam Walsh Act in 2006 and have worked assiduously in locating and apprehending fugitive sex offenders. However, more work is needed to secure the implementation of the national standards in every state, so important information can be easily shared between jurisdictions. I thank Congressman Sensenbrenner for his introduction of the Adam Walsh Reauthorization Act, legislation that is necessary to maintain the good accomplished by this act and improve this system to be more efficient and more just. Sex offenders will often go to great lengths to get close to children, to gain their trust, and then take advantage of their naivete. That is why it is important that organizations that serve children and which are meant to provide children with mentors can be sure their volunteers and employees do not have a history of predatory behavior. I commend the work of Congressman Bishop and Schiff in introducing the Child Protection Improvements Act, which will give these organizations quick and affordable access to information in FBI databases when conducting background investigations. We have a distinguished panel of witnesses here today to discuss this difficult subject, people who have dedicated their careers to protecting children and who are familiar with the pervasive nature of these crimes and the challenges in ending them. I look forward to hearing from our panel about the problems that are being encountered in preventing and investigating these crimes and what Congress and the states can do to help further combat them. Congress has passed a number of bills to address the crisis of child exploitation in the United States, but we must keep up with this ever-evolving criminal behavior. This hearing will help us determine what more can be done to end these terrible crimes. I thank all of you for being here today, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman from the Commonwealth of Virginia and beg his forgiveness again for putting him in a state other than the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have a very distinguished panel today. I will begin by swearing in our witnesses. If you would please rise and lift your right hands. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give before this committee to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? May the record indicate that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. I will introduce, you are welcome to sit down. I will introduce you as a group, and then I will recognize you individually. I would tell you up front, all members have access to your opening statements. All members either have or will read your opening statement, so to the extent you can, summarize it within the 5-minute time period so the members, and we have a great participation today, so the members can get to their questions. Our first witness is Mr. John Sheehan, who's the Vice President of the Exploited Children Division at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Our second witness is Ms. Francie Hakes. She's a child protection advocate, former AUSA, and former National Coordinator for Child Exploitation Prevention and Interdiction. Our third witness is Detective Patrick Beaver of the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. Detective Beaver is a member of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And our fourth witness is Ms. Nicole Pittman. She's the Vice President and Director of the Center on Youth Registration Reform at Impact Justice. With that, Mr. Sheehan, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is John Sheehan, and I'm the Vice President of the Exploited Child Division at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I've been with NCMEC for 17 years and have served in my role as Vice President since 2015. NCMEC was created in 1984 as a private, nonprofit organization. Our mission is to help reunite families with missing children, to help reduce child sexual exploitation and prevent child victimization. Our founders are John and Reve Walsh. NCMEC is funded by both the private and public sectors, which enables us to engage in a coordinated national response to the problem of missing and exploited children. NCMEC has multiple programs to assist families, child victims,